Hi, it's Jabria Jabbers, and the light is weird, but that's okay. I just want to say like a special a special a special message that I just got. It's just like, I'm not proud of you just because of like what you accomplish. I'm proud of you because of who you are, and I feel like that's important for somebody to hear. If you don't know and you watch this channel, I'm a very intuitive person, very appealing person, and I have a spiritual YouTube channel called The Bright Queen, and also Queen Sensitivity. If you type either of those in, you'll find my other one, but that was just a message that came through. Anyways, okay. We will be reviewing Beach Read by Emily Henry, 3 books. The Mister by E.L. James, yes, that E.L. James, and The Mrs. by E.L. James. If you were wondering why it took me so long to make another video, it's because I was trying to finish both of the books in this series and then this one, so that's why. All right, so Beach Read. Let's give a synopsis. I don't know why I can't speak today. So I've read Emily Henry before. I've only read one of her books before this one, and I quite enjoyed it. So I went into this book with very, very high expectations because I loved the first book I read from her. Looking for other books that she's read, but she does not say, which is disappointing. Authors, if you have other books, you should always include a list of your other books in every book. Like, there should be something at the front that lists also by Emily Henry, but she don't do that. So there's that. I feel like I have a piece of hair stuck in my throat, which I probably do. Give me a sec. So that's my first pet peeve with this book. So this book is about a woman named January, which I feel like is cliche, whose father died a year ago suddenly, and at the funeral of her father, she finds out from her father's mistress in the bathroom that her father led a whole like secret life. And this book is about like a year later, after she's left a long-term relationship and is running low on money from her book advance that she hasn't written yet. She has no choice but to move into the house that she's been left from her father, which is the house of her father and her father's mistress. So that's the premise of the book, and she falls in love with her next door neighbor. I think that's all I'll say from that part, because I don't want to do any spoilers. It's also going to be spoiler free. As I said, at the request of someone I love, requested that they be spoiler free. So that's like the premise of it. Her neighbor, his name is August. He goes by Gus or Everett, which is his last name. And yeah, they basically fall in love. I'm going to read some pages that I thoroughly enjoyed, like the writing of. Let's see. Maggie smiled, unbothered by their teasing, and the light caught Gus's face just right to reveal his secret dimple and lighten his eyes to a golden amber. Those eyes cut to me, and his mild smile rose. He didn't look like a different person. He looked more at ease, more sure, like all this time I'd only ever come face to face with his shadow. Standing there in that moment, I felt like I'd stumbled on something hidden and sacred, more intimate even than would have passed between us at his house. Like Gus had pulled back the curtains in the window of a house I'd been admiring, whose insides I'd been dreaming about, but even so, underestimated. So that's one of them. Another bit of writing that I admired, and this is all these 2 parts were close together, about a page and a half apart. Okay. Let's see. Found it. Dumb bunny, dumb bunny, dumb bunny. I'd spent a month in near constant contact with Gus, if I'd spent a month solid with nothing but a blood-drenched volleyball, I imagine I too would be crying as the tide swept it out to sea. But no, that wasn't true. It wasn't just loneliness and a tendency to romanticize that had gotten me there. I knew Gus. I knew his life was messy. I knew that his walls were so thick it would take years to chisel through them, and that mistrust of the world went nearly core deep. I knew I was not the magical one who could come and fix it all just by being me. Okay, so before I get into things I didn't like about the book, I'm going to say some things that I liked about the book. I liked that it was written by Emily Henry. Well, as I said before, in her previous book, I really liked. There were a lot of like good little quotes in here, little good moments, so that was nice. I like the tragedy of it, like the fact that her father, who she admired and thought was this perfect kind of dad, ended up having this second side to him, this other half to him that she had to like juggle with, and the fact that like her whole childhood was like somewhat of a lie. I liked that part. I think that's about it. I'll let you know as I divulge on the bad parts or the things that I didn't like if something comes up that I remember that I did like. So to beat the bush. What's the phrase? To beat the punch. To get to the punch. What's the phrase? Let me know in the comments. Like, get to the punch? I don't know. Anyways, basically, I didn't like this book. It's severely decreased my like or faith in Emily Henry. And I don't know if it's because of like when I read the first book that I read by her, if I was just in a different vibe or if that book was just genuinely better. Because now that I think about it, it had a very similar plot to this one. So I'm not sure if I like just was in a state where I thought that book was good or if that book was genuinely better. I just repeated what I just said. I didn't like Gus. I felt like his whole person was extremely triggering to me, and so maybe that's why. Maybe that's like it's because it's like after a relationship of mine with someone similar to Gus, I felt like it was very like one of those guys who just is emotionally unavailable and emotionally avoidant, and yet the protagonist is chasing after them. And I feel like that's extremely harmful because it's been perpetrated a lot in like women's literacy, but I don't even want to say that, just in a lot of like artistic interpretations of women and how they should respond and how men are. I feel like it's very toxic and very dangerous to be repeating this narrative, because I feel like it encourages like women or people who are chasing someone who's emotionally avoidant to continue to, because look, hey, this heroine or this protagonist in this book did it too. And I also feel like it gives men, and I want to say specifically men, it gives men like the right of way. Like it gives them an excuse, and it's like, oh, he's wounded from his trauma from his childhood, so it's okay if he ghosts you, and it's okay if he goes and meets his girlfriend and doesn't tell you that he did that. Like, you know what I mean? I feel like this book should come with a trigger warning for that intent alone, but I know there's a lot of arguments for a trigger warning, you know, in the first place. But in my opinion, I do like trigger warnings because this book was very triggering in that sense, where it's like he is emotionally avoidant character that she does chase. I really didn't like that. I feel like, I don't like this term, but I'll use it here for a lack of a better one, anti-feminist. Like I said, even though I don't like that term, because it's like I feel like everything that a feminine person does could be argued that it's feminist, you know, and feminine people have a right to be dumb and careless and girly things. But I just feel like in this day and age, especially when this was published in 2020, I would expect more from an author who's writing a romance novel. The woman in this book feel like the protagonist or the main character, January, feels very outdated. Like something that, like, I wouldn't be surprised if this book was written in like 2002, is what I mean by the relationship dynamic. Another thing I didn't like is that, like, January, she's a writer, right? And she's been depressed like this whole time since her dad died. She doesn't exercise, doesn't really eat healthy food, doesn't go out much, drinks a lot of alcohol, and yet she still has a flat stomach somehow. She's a flat stomach, and she's like slim and like petite. And I'm just like, I don't like that either, because I feel like if you consume a lot of alcohol and you don't have like a very good diet, you don't work out, you don't wash your face consistently, you're depressed, you're gonna have acne, you're gonna gain weight. Like, these are things that are very normal. You know, if you do these things, you're gonna look gross. And I don't like how either of them, because they're both in a very similar situation, I don't like how either of them look like they still have like clear skin and like are like strong and in shape. I feel like that's completely unrealistic. And then something else that I would have liked, I feel like could have improved this book, is if there was no romance at all, or if there was a much less emphasis on this being a romantic kind of novel. I would have much rather preferred it if it was about her coping and growing with this loss, and then sprinkled in some romance, you know. But like, ultimately the book would have been about her growth and her journey of healing this massive wound, this massive canyon that was left in the wake of her father's sudden death. I feel like that would have helped it a lot. Another thing that annoyed me about this book is the title. They barely go to the beach. Maybe that's like the point. Maybe it's like supposed to be ironic, but like, I just don't like it. Even in the context of like what I think it's meaning in terms of the story, because there's this deal that they make, I don't like it. I feel like the title is like what's it called? Like a thirst trap for readers. They're like, ooh, beach read. It's gonna be about these two authors who like have a, what's it called, love-hate romantic relationship, and then they grow to love each other, like that, enemies to lovers. And it's not that at all. I don't give that at all. So I feel like it's like clickbait for a book. So I didn't like that. And so speaking of like the quotes that I mentioned as like one of the things I liked about this book, the little quotes, and even the ones that I read, for example, it was just too cheesy sometimes, and it felt almost disorganized and forced, like these little like philosophical quoted moments. It felt very like mainstream rather than like something they actually meant, and by they I mean the author, something the author actually meant. I feel like it was just put there to be like, oh, this is one of those books. It's not just a romantic book, it's deep, and it's like, it's to the heart, but it just feels out of place. And it felt forced to me, like some of the little phrases and stuff. I also didn't like, because there are sex scenes in here. I didn't like how they were written. No, I didn't like how they were written. They didn't make me feel much of anything. Didn't make me feel very steamy. And I also didn't like the before, like the build up to it, and I didn't like the after effect. Like it was like it's almost like slow burny, these two, but it's like I said, because he's so toxic and therefore she is too, for being attracted to someone who is toxic, which makes sense if she's depressed and has lost her father and is grieving and reeling from, you know, these truthful revelations. You would go to a toxic person, and I don't like how that like it would have been a better book if like in the end after she'd grown and healed, like I said, and this was just a sprinkle of a romance rather than like a romance book, if at the end she realized like this person is not best for me, he was what I needed while I was in that frequency of like grief and depression. But as I've grown, like I've realized like I deserve like someone better, or of a higher frequency or a higher consciousness than that one I was in. Like, I don't like that it was so focused on this connection versus like her healing journey. And just like I did in my last video, I will give you an example of what I think is a better book. There might be like a lot of like controversy around this book, I don't know, but I enjoyed reading it. It's called Wild by Cheryl Strayed. And it was a movie. It was a movie that was turned into a movie. I can't speak, by Reese Witherspoon, and starred in by Reese Witherspoon. But the book is much better, and the book does a great job of like focusing on the grief aspect after losing a parent. But it has sprinkles of romance in it. But the final conclusion, or the whole point of the book, is not centered around romance, because it didn't need to have that. And it does have philosophical moments in there and little quotes and little things, but it feels very natural and organic rather than something that's like forced. And also the title Wild matches perfectly with the actual content of the book. So yeah, just to prove to you that I'm not just a critic who's making up shit and doesn't know what she's talking about with writing, I decided to like write down like little poems of how I felt, or little poems that I feel reflect the book, like I usually do in all my purchased books, or specifically my Sarah J. Maas books that I've purchased. But I decided to do this because now I have a YouTube channel. So listen out for that, and then after that I'm going to give my rating out of 5. I didn't want this. I didn't want to make this, write this, create this, because I didn't want to read it. I didn't want to see me, because I didn't want to see my thoughts. Thorns instead of roses, bleach to the bloom, chaos to the order, and hate steeped in devastation. Me, I didn't want this because I didn't want me, but then I learned that I wanted you, and that made me want me too. Beach read, everybody. The rating that I'm giving Beach Read out of 5, 2.8. Would not recommend this to anyone. However, it's not terrible. I feel like if you're a person that's like depressed and still in that codependency energy, which I have certainly been in before, and you want to get out of it, this could help you get through it. Like if you're still attracted to people who are emotionally avoidant, if you're in a relationship where you're having to chase someone and like like get a stone to bleed, like getting blood out of a stone. Like if you have to chase someone and like be like, confess to me, like show me, tell me, because that's what happens in here, this is for you. Otherwise, if you're trying to like, if you've already kind of gone through that and you want to like have a healthy state of mind and reinforce that, do not read this. 2.8. And I'm saying that even that is just because it's Emily Henry and she's rather popular, and before I enjoyed her book. So now we move on to the Mister. Again, this is the reason why it took me a while to post another video, because while this one was quick for me to read, this one was not. It took me much longer than I thought it would to finish this book, and so delays. So this is the E.L. James who wrote 50 Shades of Grey, 50 Shades Darker, 50 Shades Freed, who wrote Grayed, Darker, and Freed. The very same. I had no idea that she had like written more books, but I'm so glad I didn't know, because like I got to read them back to back and I didn't have to wait. And I'm pretty sure it's like over, like it's just these 2 books, the Mr. and the Mrs. So let's get into it. So this book is based in 2019. I was a bit worried that it would be like historical fiction. I don't like those books too much. It's a rare thing that I like those books. So it's based in 2019 in London, honey. And there's this guy, his name is Maxim, and his brother just died, and he's kind of like he's a playboy player, has a different girl in his bed every night, and is kind of reeling from the death of his brother, the untimely death of his brother, because it was out of nowhere. And this book is from two different perspectives. The other perspective is from Alessia. She is an Albanian woman who was smuggled into London, unaware that it would become unaware that she was going into trafficking, into human trafficking, and she escapes, and she goes to the only house or place that she knows in London, which is her mother's best friend, who owns a maid service. And so she becomes the maid of Maxim, the Mister. So that's like the setting, the premise of this book. You already know, like, they fall in love, and it's kind of like the book about them falling in love. So what I was kind of disappointed in, even though this book was in 2019, I don't know when they passed the thing, but they do this now. Like, they put trigger warnings. This book should definitely have a trigger warning. It should have a trigger warning for what's it called? Human trafficking, sex trafficking, emotional abuse, physical abuse. I'm trying to figure out like which book like ended with what. Let me see. Yeah, attempted essay, yeah, domestic violence, assault from parents, like all that stuff is in this book. So if you are like a victim in any of these things, or if you have a particular sensitivity to these things, that shit happens in this book. Yeah. So I love this book. Just to cut to the chase, I couldn't think of that word or that phrase earlier. There's another one, but it's like, that's one of them. Cut to the chase. To cut to the chase, I like this book. It was lighthearted for the most part. Very like fun little romantic novel. Like, hoo-hoo, we fall in love. It's very spicy. Certainly not the most spicy that I've read, but like to give you like a spice level out of 5, I would put it at a 3. Spice level out of 5, I would put it at a 3. Yeah, because I've definitely read spicier. I liked the money. I love a good rich man. I love a good rich setting, luxury, buy me what I want. And I loved how like quickly they fell in love, because it just showed you like how it's a lovey-dovey type of story. Very lovey-dovey, very easy to read. What else did I like about it? It's just like one of those little cute books you pick up, spicy little book that you can read in like a coffee shop or at your desk. And it's not like too complex where you have to remember all these character names. Yeah, you don't have to do all this. It's like, it's not a heavy book, even though there are heavy elements in it. And like I said, those could be triggering to certain people. Yeah, nice, quick, kissy fun. So I'm gonna read you what I wrote. I wrote a short poem for how I think how the book feels or felt to me. And then after that, I'll give you my rating, and then I'll review the misses. Resistance feels like home when all you've known is shelter. I was down bad and trodden. I was escaping my lodgings. I am now a wanderer. I am now a seer. When I saw you, the world stilled. I was a runner, and I run still, but always only to you. 4 walls of 5'2", every square inch of interlude, every nail gives me a clue. Oh, how all Rome's roads lead back to you. I was down bad trodden. I was escaping my lodgings. I am now a wanderer, because now I see. All your notes, so too, lead back home to me. 4 out of 5, I will say. And maybe that's too high. I feel like I'm teetering between 3.7 and 4 out of 5. Because it's like, it hits the mark for what it is. It's like one of those just cute, short and sweet books, you know? But I also feel like I've read better. I've read ones that are easier to read and don't have like tough or sticky moments, if that makes sense. Like, I would say that Pucking Around does it better. Pucking Around is way more playful though, but I don't feel like this was supposed to be too playful. So like I said, for the mark that it was supposed to hit, 3.7 out of 5. Because I feel like it could have been better. But like, I would recommend it to someone, probably an older woman or older person who doesn't read that much. I would recommend this book, especially if they're like wanting to get spicy. Okay, here we have The Misses. As I stated before, this book took me longer to read, and it's because, so let's set the setting. So at the end of this book, at the end of Mister, they go back to Albania, and the dad gives them permission to marry, and then that's how you start this book. So what I didn't like about this book is that part took so damn long. Like, them getting married in Albania took up a lot of space. It's like a good 1/4 of the book is them getting married in Albania. I don't feel like that was necessary. I feel like a more skilled or crafted author could have gotten across all those points in a more succinct way. Meaning, I see that I understand that the beginning was important to set up like the plot for the rest of the book, like things that happened at that week they were preparing for the wedding, all like came to a front in later parts of the book. So I get why it was important, but I feel like a better, more skilled, crafty writer could have finessed and put all those elements and gotten them to come across very clearly with less wordiness. I don't feel like all those scenes were needed. Also, something I didn't like I said, the first book is spicy, 3 out of 5 on the spice level. A lot of the positions, I will say, are like, the build up to the sex was kind of repetitive in this book. It's like, okay, we got it in that book, let's spice it up, or let's like give it a different setting, let's do it here. It was very like, it didn't progress enough for me in terms of the spiciness. Like I said, it was repetitive. I feel like it could have been done better, and I wish they would have had like a scene that was more in depth in terms of description versus like 1 or 2 pages or 2 pages. Like, I feel like since we're here and we're married now, I wish there would have been like a scene or 2 that like got more into it, if that makes sense. I was waiting for that, did not come. No pun intended. What else did I like or not like about this book, or what do I have to say about this book? I did not like a lot of the female characters, and even the male characters. I feel like the main character, I feel like he could have been a bit more progressive, but like, Europe. You know, can't ask too much from the Europeans. But yeah, the women, I feel like they were so obviously toxic, and there needed to be boundaries set. And to be honest, I think it was probably just me, because I was triggered by like how people who had literally caused harm to the missus would show up at their place unannounced and be welcomed in. Like, people who'd literally like cussed her out or assaulted her would show up at their house, and they'd be like, oh, you can come in and like we can talk about it. That was very triggering for me, like the home thing. So like I said, it could just be me, but I didn't like that. I didn't like that there weren't much consequences to people who endangered the missus. Like, only the thugs were like seen in that way, but not like the rich people. And I didn't like that. I don't like how like the people who were affluent and had auspicious opportunities and money and privilege, despite how like gross they were, like they were still allowed to be in the presence, like there were no boundaries set. And I would expect more from E.L. James, who is, I would say by now, an expert in consenting, writing about consenting and boundaries and stuff like that. I would say that she is in a position where she should be educated on those things, and I feel like they weren't executed well in this book. I would say this book wasn't a good follow-up to Mister, because you're expecting that elevation, because I think this one was released in 2023, and look, she did the thing. She listed her books as you're supposed to. Yeah, this one was released in 2023, so 2019 and 2023, that's 4 years. In 4 years to write this, it should have been at least twice as good as the first one. I feel like, to compare to herself, I feel like 50 Shades Darker was a step up. It was a true progression from 50 Shades of Grey, but I read those when I was like 19, so if I go back and read it, I might have a different opinion now that I'm like more well read in terms of mature adult books, but for now that's how I feel. Something else that I liked, did I like anything else about the book? I felt, so there could, I don't know, I need to do my research actually to see if there's going to be another one, because I feel like there was a plot that never, like it was there, but it never came to a close. I also feel like, so eventually Alessia's character, and I'm sorry if I'm saying her name wrong, meets her, like her great uncle, and it's like, it feels like it's just thrown in to like be like, oh, here, by the way, you randomly have this uncle. I feel like it didn't add anything to the story. I didn't like that. I don't feel like he got characterized very well. Yeah, so I'm gonna read what I wrote, my little poem, as a reflection, and then I'll give you my rating out of 5. The Misses. My power was from a player who lived to play the game, between the lines, or should I say, between the linens. Innocent, rich kid, bad at badminton, is smitten by this substance queen. Though I am not far down, I am learning now, I am learning how to write my name on every lamppost in your town. What was cute is now sexy, what was simple is now complex. You were the first to fall to your knees, and I was the first to test. I love you, Count, I say, and then you angelically respond. I love you, Countess. The rating that I give this book out of 5, I gave the other one 3.7. I would give this one a 3. A solid 3, because I feel like it wasn't terrible, and if you've read the first one, it does match with it, but because it didn't surpass it, it has to be less than 3.7, so a 3. All right, leave a comment if you've read any of these books. Let me know. If you enjoyed this review, if you agree or disagree with me on certain things, be respectful and let me know in the comments. Subscribe if you haven't already. Share, and I'll peep you next time. Bye.